Hello, and welcome back to the Cutie Art Crusaders, episode 5 for July 31st, 2012. I think I should start including the date, just because I think that's a little bit easier to tell when these things are airing, helps people who don't pay attention to the screen figure out when this is supposed to be going up, just in case they're like, why are they so behind in different things? So,
right. Well, that's true, but it's actually the first.
Australians.
Australians.
For Australians, this premieres on the 1st, I think. So,
Or the 32nd if you live in like imaginary land.
At like 11 o'clock in the morning, which is why I can't be there. But
yeah. Okay. Anyways, my name is Rainbow Plasma. I'm the organizer and editor of this podcast, and today I'm joined by...
Burned.
Burned! What do you do, Burned?
I help coordinate all of our special guests and invite people to come and air on our show and maybe possibly be interviewed by us or maybe highlights individuals' art.
I'm Flutterguy317, and I coordinate all of the art submissions and find all the art to match our episode's theme.
Pinky Dash, I do questions. Yeah. Fun.
Yay.
Nice.
Exciting.
That's it. All right. So in episode 5, we've got a pretty cool theme going on here that I thought of a couple of weeks ago, which was fire, and it's a very basic theme, but it's something that I think can really work out well, especially in artistic pieces. Fire, a lot of the times, is very hard to do, but when it's done right, it looks quite well. So it's kind of hard to go on further about fire. I mean, you guys know what fire is, right? You know, the red orange thing hurts when you touch it.
Yeah,
Fire is
so
indeed hot.
I'm very well versed in fire.
I've definitely learned well that fire is hot.
Yeah.
Thank you, Burned. Fire is hot.
Don't
For
touch
those
fire.
who don't know, don't touch fire.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
All right, so I guess we can jump right into the art then.
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Our first piece is by Ray Duran. I think that's how you pronounce it. Again, I'm sorry if I mispronounce the name. It's very hard just going by spelling.
Again, people need to learn to get better names.
Yeah.
so rude.
No offense to you guys.
Your names are just terrible and we can't help it. We're sorry.
Oh, God.
So-
Let's move on.
We're joking. We love your weird pronounced names.
And we love your art, especially
Ray
this piece, which is called Twilight's Fire Thingy.
Great title.
Yes, it is
Yes.
a great title. Yeah, that's something as artists that we try and do is come up with good titles for our art. Some are
It's
better
harder
than
than it
others.
sounds.
Oh, God, titles are
Art-
so hard to come up with.
Our fire as an artistic expression is definitely really hard to do. It's something really hard to master as well. And something really hard to make it look realistic.
Mhm.
But with this piece, Twilight's Fire Thingy, it's very almost minimalistic in how he makes the fire, with just like the base dark orange red, and then the lighter orange, and then the yellows, and even the whites, which make it look really cool, especially her eyes. But there's not a lot put into the depth of the fire, but it makes it look really cool, and it's really visually awesome.
Yeah, and I think they only used like 4 or 5 different colors in this, but the way that they layered it and the way that they kind of swirled them together makes it all fit together.
Definitely, especially the sharp edge of the darker
Sharp edge,
orange,
yep.
and like the dark edge of the lighter orange, and then how the yellow is like a gradient that
Yeah.
goes into it, and the white's a gradient. Looks really cool.
Yeah.
The contrasting like
Was
sharp edge
Totally
to
just about to say that.
light edge that beats you to it.
I think that fire is something, like fire is hard to get right just because whenever you see fire in an artistic piece, it always has to be realistic. Because if the fire isn't realistic, it just looks straight up cartoony and you kind of lose that appeal for it. Whereas in pieces where you're using fire, I find that 9 times out of 10, the pieces themselves are a little bit more intense, I think. Stuff that uses fire is a little bit more harsh and I'm not sure the right word of it, but I think you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. It adds specific feeling, especially when you start getting into like color theory and things like that. Just like the overall feeling, warmth, the anger, the power of fire. It's really cool in a lot of art pieces. Like, not often do you see pieces that include fire that are, sad or
Or
dramatic.
happy, or
Yeah. I mean, maybe I've seen like a sad Charmander piece, but that's when he's in the rain and there's a lot of blue, but that's not even My Little Pony. What's Pokemon?
Yeah, which is awesome, but not My Little Pony.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's really interesting because especially with like the minimalistic approach with this piece, whereas you see a lot of pieces of art with fire that they're very detailed and very in depth, and the fire has like a lot of different gradients and shading and stuff like that. And this one goes completely in the opposite direction, and even the pony character is like very minimalistically done. So it really brings out that fiery harshness or that emotion. The fire stands out as like the centerpiece.
I also like the movement in this piece is also really awesome with like just the licks of fire going straight at the screen. You have those two, what are those, like whips of fire right over her top mane, and then the one going off the screen to the bottom there, and the one on the bottom left. And you can see the white parts of the fire like actually coming off of it.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It's very messy, and I think that's the problem with people. Like when people try to make fire, for example, as a vector artist, it's very hard to make fire just because fire is it's so messy. It needs to be wild and untamed, and when people try to make fire, I think people fail a lot making fire because they're trying to make it look a specific. They're forcing it to look messy, but they're not actually just like messily making it. And when you have this kind of like random swooshes and a lick of fire there and everything, that's when you get the real organic fire look to it.
Mm-hmm. In the show, when Twilight just lights and bursts into flame, does her hair have a stroke? Does it have an outline? Do you know?
No, it doesn't, because I made the vector for Rainbow, or not Rainbow, Rapidash Sparkle.
Nice.
Nice.
So even in
No,
the show,
yeah.
when they try to make fire look freeform, even if it's not a character, they break that rule. That character should have strokes.
Yeah.
Another cool thing that I like in this piece is the shadow that the fire casts. If you look at her horn or the shadow on her arm or leg, her mane and tail blowing behind her casts that shadow on her limbs and on her body, and it looks pretty good.
You've also got the shadow along the ground as well, so it's like it's all sort of line art heading away from her on the ground.
Yeah, it's definitely a little hard to see, but they do that really well, especially behind her.
Neat. Yeah, that ties into our last episode actually about shading. So if you haven't seen that, check it out. It's up on YouTube.
Heyo, cross promotion.
Self-promotion.
Use your $5, Flutter Guy.
Yay, money. Yeah, so Byrne mentioned earlier about color theory, and I guess we can go a little bit into color theory on this piece. And I guess starting with like the reds, red and orange and yellow, they're very warm colors, and white, even though it might seem like it would be a cool color, when mixed with those colors kind of brings out this really hot, intense heat kind of color. And actually, I think it was Spirito talked about that when we did their interview.
Here's another $5.
No, definitely, especially when the white and the yellow and the orange meet, it creates that heat, and how they don't have a sharp edge to them in the center of the fire is definitely where you can tell that it's almost how they're blending in the gradients, and how they blend together is almost that you can tell that that's intensely hot, because it's almost blinding is what it appears to be, is what it creates the illusion of.
White's really cool because white can be either intense hot or intense cool. Just
No, you have like the center of a flame, or you have snow.
right, just the very, very, very small variances in like the color. So if you right here, this isn't quite pure white. It's more of like it's very slightly orange, and so you have that very slight change. But if you did it very slightly blue, then it'd be a completely different feel to it. We talk a little bit later. I believe there's a question that comes up later about saturation, hue, lightness. But little changes in that. Just little changes in like hue of the actual body can change it from being intense hot to intense cold very quickly.
And also, I think with the colors that surround it also have a big influence on what kind of emotion it portrays as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the deep brown in the background. Like brown, it has a lot of red. There's a lot of red in brown, and you can definitely tell that it's a really dark auburn. But it's not like a gray. It's not like a black. It's not like a blue, but it's almost that earthen feel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Changing the subject a little bit on the character. It's Twilight, obviously, but you can her outline. It even changes, but it's like it's a orange outline, and I believe it's the same color orange than her mane and tail. So like how it blends into the character, and then yet still keeps its constant color all the way around. Still pretty cool.
All right, let's move on. Our next piece is by VIJ8. I think I don't know. I don't want to attempt
VIG-8.
It's
Continuing our
VIJ
trend of
dash
don't forget
eight.
the
bad
Yeah.
names.
Oh yes. And this piece is called Twilight Sparkle on Fire. Oh no.
Even
Oh,
better
no.
title.
It's a great title.
These two pieces are really similar, and I think
Yeah.
you'll run into a lot when you're looking for pieces of My Little Pony fan art that has fire on it. I know that's kind of a specific category, but I know because I had to look up these art pieces this week. When you're looking for pieces of MLP art that's got to do with fire, a lot of it comes with Twilight, because obviously that episode with her when she catches on fire because she's so angry. So this first one and the second one kind of relate to each other a lot, just in not only kind of art style a little bit, but also character and weird names.
I love the description on the DeviantArt for this. Someone call the fire department.
A wild Rapidash has appeared.
Yeah, so this piece is somewhat similar to the last one, in that it uses, I guess, very few base colors, but it does a lot more blending of the colors and a lot more like with the gradients in between the colors. And Twilight herself is actually a little bit more minimalistic, not as much detail, I feel, and more focus is put on to like the shading. Like you can actually see in her chest there's like some fiery smoke coming off of it, and like on her right front leg you can see that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, so much to say. She's definitely a little bit more minimalistic in like her details, but there's a lot more detail in the shading, like on her ankle, chest, and neck, and in the shadows of the piece. But just like you said, the orange going around her body, like highlighting her, it's really cool because it's almost like the outside of her is kind of
It looks
glowing
like
with that fire. Yeah, but it's also, if you look at her stomach, it's almost as if it's the light being cast on her from the, what is that, molten lava coming out of her hooves.
That can't be healthy.
Yeah, so it's almost that she's radiating with that heat, but it's also like the light's being cast on her as well. And even in her eyes and her face a little bit, you still see that yellow glow it's created from some of the fire. Yeah.
Yeah, her eyes especially are really well done in this piece because you can kind of you get a glimpse of this orangey reflection in them, even though it's very dull, and it appears to be coming up from the floor and just reflecting back out at you, which is really cool.
Something I love about this one is where the fire, which is her mane, joins her head. There's no set barrier between them. It's like she is becoming the fire. It's like it's the white of her fill is sort of blending into the fire.
Yeah, especially on her neck.
Yeah, the neck and the top of her head.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Something that I was talking about again in our last episode, our lighting and shading episode, how we could see the medium in which that the artist painted his piece. So was our last artist, and you could see his brushstrokes and the shape of his brush and square.
Yeah,
and this one,
I'm so glad you're talking about this.
Yeah, in this one, it's really, really cool to see that, especially in the mane, because this artist uses a lot of different brushes and brush styles. You can see where the hair whips on the outside, how it's almost a clean, smoky feel, and how it blends in with the background. But then you can see the brush where he used in the back part of the mane and the tail, how it has those lines, and then it whips into the piece, and all the different forms and mediums and brushes in which he used to paint this piece also creates a really awesome feel.
Again, I think that comes down to keeping it messy. Making sure it's not perfect. He knows that, technically you're not supposed to be able to see your brushstrokes. That's kind of a basic thing. That can be used for a style.
It definitely depends. It depends on the style and the medium in which you're doing it.
But in general, you're not supposed to be able to tell, like, if this is made in Photoshop, you're not supposed to be like, oh, I recognize that. That's one of the default brush things. You're just supposed to look at the art piece as a whole. But again, because it's fire, I like the fact that you can see it. It looks very messy. It looks very throw something in there and then scribble something over there, and it keeps it very organic.
Mm-hmm. But even in art, especially even well-made art, it's always really awesome to be able to tell in which the medium in which it's made, because it adds more of a feeling to a piece than if you were to just completely hide it. Because if you look at a piece of art and you can't tell how it's made and everything is hidden and looks super clean and crisp, it has that feel, but it's almost boring to a sense, because you can't see the passion that the artist put into it with the tools of that artist's trade.
I would agree with you to a point there. I think for things like painting and watercolor, I think it's really cool because it's part of the medium itself. I think for the most part, things like Photoshop and a lot of the more digital
art. Well, it's nice to see those traditional mediums bleed in with the digital medium.
Right, but I think for the most part in like digital art pieces, like if, for example, if you're going to use Photoshop or maybe Psy or something, I think for the most part for digital art, it's better to not see it.
Well, that's just like your opinion, man. Maybe contradictory to mine.
Anyway, I can see it in this piece, and I think it works really well in this piece.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, so you mean I'm correct?
Whoa.
Just joking. Moving on. So
oh my God, it's like Burns' audio track has suddenly disappeared.
No. Why are you the editor? No, if you on her mane, on her tail, you can see the sparks, like even coming off her hooves, like all the little sparks shooting out everywhere as well from the flame is again like an awesome touch. It was traditional, it's like he flicked his paintbrush at the canvas, but again, it's digital.
Yeah, I really like how he did the lava. I believe that's lava. Because it gives this very watery kind of feel to it. Especially if you look on the very right side, where you have like this gradient. It almost looks like there's waves of lava. And then you have the cracks in the ground, and you can kind of see the lava.
Yeah, they look like cracks, but they almost look like a lava dripping away.
Yeah.
And they got the splashes too, like she's splashing down it, like she's angry and she's smashing her hooves down.
Either that or just like, I don't know, just like summoning lava out of the ground. It's a freaking superpower. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyone else have anything to say about this?
I really like her mane.
Yeah. If only I could voice crack.
Right.
I really like her mane.
I can't even believe that didn't even occur to me.
I guess as the only filly of the group, you would be talented at that, RP.
Wait, what? I'm 18, you jerk.
So yeah, Philly.
Wow. All right, fine. I'm just gonna go sulk in the corner now while you move on to the next piece.
Oh,
Okay.
Don't do that.
All
right.
Please.
Yes, our next piece is a piece by Me You.
Oh, here we go. More.
No, it's meow.
Meow.
M-I-E-A-U.
Meow.
It's meow.
That's clever,
Meow.
and I should have seen the cat. Yeah.
Me dash.
And this piece is called Commission Iridescence. And this is a little bit different from our previous pieces in that the fire isn't really the central focal point, but it does add a lot to the piece. The fire is basically in the lantern and kind of coming out of the lantern. And there's a lot of movement in this piece, and you can definitely see that in the way that the flames are kind of pushed up and in a circular fashion. It's a really well done piece.
I've stopped sulking to come back and talk about this piece because I love this piece so much. This artist made another piece of art, which we're probably going to feature in a future episode. But it was basically like an Enderman turned into a pony, and it's just the art style that this person has. I love it so much, and I can't really describe what it is, but it's just I love the way that he and or she makes ponies look, and it just looks so cool. So this piece is really, really awesome. I love the pony almost looks kind of fiery himself too, just because the coincidental coloring of him, kind of that reddy, purpley kind of coat. What's the word? Coat? Fur? This is getting weird now, but
fill color.
Fill color.
That.
There we go.
Says on a vector. No, but I definitely know what you mean by the artist style. The artist definitely loves to just mix just a rainbow of colors in everything he does, and then like the majority of colors that he picks for his palette is what creates like the feel of his piece. So I mean, you've got greens, you've got blues, you've got whites, you've got everything in this piece. That it just makes it so cool to look at, and how he combines those colors is just crazy unique. And you can even see, if you look at the pony, his color is like a kind of like a magenta, dark purple, blue is all in him. And then if you look at the chain, you can kind of see how the chain is glowing with kind of his color palette and some greens and purples because he's holding the chain with his magic and like, throwing the torch.
Huh. That's really neat.
Would you say this kind of looks like a watercolor? I'm not the best at identifying.
No,
them.
he definitely this piece definitely has that kind of watercolor feel. But see, this is my point earlier, is this is a digital medium, but you get that watercolor feel because of how the colors are very translucent. The colors are very see-through, and then how they blend and react with each other. And then it's a very light and desaturated feel creates that watercolor feel digitally.
Right, so it's kind of like the same one from the last piece with Twilight and the lava and stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
you can see.
Sorry, I'm just gonna skip back here for a second because I completely missed this out. I was meaning to talk about this, but one cool thing about the last thing that we saw, the Twilight Sparkle on Fire, we just featured it. It'll be on the screen. That was actually made in August of 2011, so basically like a year ago. And so a lot of these things are newer. For example, the current art piece, Iridescence, that was made May 16th, 2012. So that's quite new. A lot of the other stuff that we made is new as of like June or May or something like that. But it's really cool to see art pieces from the past as well. And we try to go back and reach as far back as we can to find some really cool unknown pieces like that. Anyways, back to the current picture. Sorry.
That's all right. Just going back to the topic of the whole watercolor thing, you can see on the pony's coat, just the way that the colors blend, it kind of does give it that very watercolory, kind of like almost splotchy kind of feel. But like blended splotchy in a really cool fashion.
I mean, what makes up the style is how the artist makes this. Like, I have no idea how the artist goes and makes that kind of like color blended feel digitally, but it's really cool.
Yeah.
And then again, something I love to see played with in different art styles is the outlines, because if you notice, the pony, his outline is kind of black. But the artist went back over and added light, added white, added yellows, added green on his flank there and like the tail, and then added red like on the outlines of his strokes and colors. One of my favorite all-time artists, artist by the name of Blitz Pony, loves doing that, and that's her unique style. And you see a little bit of that in this artist style as well.
Yeah, and you can definitely see like the reflected light. From the lantern kind of on his left hoof, the hoof that's raised. You can kind of see some yellows and some greens even mixed in there too.
It's also in his eyes, reflection in his eyes.
Another thing that's one of my favorite concepts about this piece is just the total overall feeling of depth. If you look at the lamp, it's in the foreground. It's right in your face. It's what's in focus. It has a lot of detail and it's really bright put into it. But then if you look at the chain, how it spirals back behind the character and kind of loses focus and then comes back, and then you have him in focus as well, it creates just the overall depth of what's in front and what's behind, and it creates a really cool feeling. And when you look at this piece, the first thing that you see is kind of the character in the soft tones, but then the brightness and the whiteness of that lamp is then what attracts your eye to it, and then you can kind of follow it and spiral into the character.
I never would have thought that ponies would look cool. Like, again, I've been a brony for 6 months now? This looks really cool. It's been, I think, 7 months now, but this looks really awesome. This looks...
Yeah.
I'm not allowed to swear on this show, but bad something.
Buy some apples this piece of art. Holy Celestia.
It looks really cool. I love the way that they use the magic as kind of like how he uses that in the book to create this kind of cool spell where he's whipping around the lantern. Again, the fire looks really cool, and fire is something you don't really see in the show because it's kind of aggressive. It's only used like once, maybe twice in the show, just because it's so aggressive. But
but sorry to derail you, but my favorite use of fire ever in the show is when Twilight gets sucked down in the crystal prism.
Yep.
Green fire, like that was the darkest freaking thing I've ever seen in the show. It was freaking amazing. Favorite
awesome.
Scene of that show. Anyway, please go on, continue.
No, I was finishing up and just saying I love how this is the reason why I love the fan art the most is because, it takes something like ponies that, let's be honest, even on the show, they're pretty cutesy. Like, no one can deny that. They're pretty cutesy. And even like all the animation style from the show is very cartoony and younger. And you can just take something like that and turn it into this really cool medium that like most people could look at and say that looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm biased because, you know, I like ponies. But but I think that
Fair
looks
enough.
really cool.
Contrary to popular opinion, you can still be BA and love ponies.
Yes. Yeah, so I find that really fascinating. That's what I really love about the fan art is that he can take a subject like ponies and make them look so cool.
Yeah.
Not that they aren't
one
cool
more thing.
already, I mean.
One more thing that I noticed about this piece actually is someone, I think you mentioned the book earlier, and there's actually a bit of fire coming out of the book. It's
Yeah, the
Out of
book's on fire.
pages.
like that. Yeah, that's really neat.
That's awesome.
gonna-
And
Also,
how it like it goes off of the framed picture too.
yeah.
Uh,
Well,
yeah.
this artist is really cool is that he combines the use of frame and then breaking that frame all at the same time. So the frame is pentagon?
Pentagon,
And
yeah.
then
Yeah.
and he has the book coming out of the edge and then the spiral of the chain and then the flames coming out of it. But then he has kind of that clean frame as well, and where he crops specific parts of the image, and he does that a lot of his artwork, especially in the Enter Pony artwork, and makes a really cool use of it.
It's good when you have transparent things. For example, a lot of the watercolory stuff, you can see it especially when it pops out of the frame, but it's kind of transparent, and it's meant to do that to kind of like change the colors around and kind of give it that watercolor look. But if this didn't have a background, I think it would be worse because it's the see-through stuff, it would be affected by whatever's behind it, and like DeviantArt has this like green page to it that might have affected how it looked, and so he gave it like a base without giving it a full background, which is really
And
interesting.
he made his final piece of art, and then and like how I was talking about, and how he breaks the border and then has that clean cut edge, and then he added a little bit of drop shadow on the entire piece, and then so it makes again this watercolor piece that has a lot of depth and dimension in the art also appear 3D on your screen.
Yeah. All right. I think we've analyzed this piece a lot.
Yeah, the
It is.
thing I just
It
like
is a-
the last thing I'd like to mention is just
Yeah,
like
yeah,
on the
go ahead.
lantern, the white and how he outlines it with that white. I mean, that's one of my favorite things that I love seeing an artistic style is just re-outlining or using lines to go on the outside of something, just because it kind of breaks the normal use of strokes and creates like a highlight on the edge of objects or characters, and I just love it.
Yeah.
Especially
Well,
on
it
the
goes
book.
outside
He does
the-
it on the book a lot as well, too.
Yeah. It goes
yeah.
outside what the show does, which is really neat.
Mhm.
All right. So so moving on. Our last piece of art that we have for this theme is by an artist known as Ziom05 or Ziom05. Again,
This entire
names,
episode has
pronunciation.
been artists that are having to pronounce.
Fifth
I am so
apology.
sorry.
I'm going to spell it out
I'm
again because I've done this
so
for all the other
horrible.
ones, but it's Ziom05. And yes, it is Zed because that's the proper way to say it.
Oh,
Friggin'
Yes,
Canadians.
Zed.
It is Zed. And this piece is called Discord versus Lightmare Sun.
Okay, so I was going to say, if that last piece made ponies look cool, then this makes ponies look Sub-Zero cool. I'm just going to steal that from Top Gear. It's Sub-Zero cool. This piece here is absolutely amazing, and I have no idea how anybody could even go about thinking about something like this in their head before they start making it. I have no idea how you'd go about making something like this. There is just so
One of
much
the-
detail in
One of the
everything.
things said about art is you never know what you're going to make until you start making
Hmm.
a piece. Like, you maybe just have a concept in your mind, but I mean, again, it said like some of the great artists, they don't know or have a bit like, or they don't know the final product in their head. Some do, but not many. But creating great art is all what goes into making it and knowing what you're doing. So.
This was actually the daily deviation on July the 7th or July the 5th, I believe.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, this is people are recognizing good art. That's the one of the things I've been kind of annoyed with is the fact that a lot of stuff that we look at, this really cool stuff that we've been featuring, I'm looking over and it's like, oh, that's got like 2,000 views. Only 2,000 people have seen this. Like the iridescence one, like 1,300 views. I was like, we need more people to see it. This is an example of putting in hard work, coming out with awesome art, and some real appreciation for that art, which is awesome to see.
I mean, this would have taken hours to make. This is ridiculous.
Days.
This artist Ziom05, like, I'm again a big fan of him, and there's so much work and depth and just everything and knowledge and artistic knowledge put into this piece. There's color theory, there's movement, there's depth, there's lighting, there's everything. Everything put into this piece is just it's so hard to wrap your head around to create something like this.
I don't even know where to start talking about it.
All right, let's break it down here. So first of all, our theme is fire, and so obviously
Yes.
where fire comes into it is on the character called Lightmare Sun.
It's Celestia.
Right. So that's kind of like the opposite of Nightmare Moon. It's kind of like I guess what they call like the ultimate form of Celestia, as opposed to like the ultimate form.
I get that now.
Yeah. So Lightmare Sun, obviously,
Nightmare Moon.
very much a kind of when Celestia gets crazy angry or goes insane, she gets like fire wings, and I think it's a really cool concept.
Super Saiyan is what she does.
I'm surprised that people haven't come up with Lightmare Sun. I mean, it's a pretty good name.
This is IMO 5. He's not famous for no reason.
So let's start with that. Let's start with that character in particular, and we'll move on from there. So, what do you guys see from that character that you really think is a good piece of art?
Well, it took me a while to realize it was Celestia. I just saw the cutie mark.
Yeah, and the armor.
I think the name just gives it away a little bit.
What I first noticed and what's really neat is how they created the fire using these like long, continuous brushstrokes, and they all originate from, I guess, Lightmare Sun, and they're all like a gradient tone. So it starts this intense white, where they meet her body, and then it slowly fades to these yellows and oranges, and it's a really cool style, and it shows fire really well because you can do a lot of randomness with it.
I really love the outside of that fire. It's the kind of like orange glow that goes around it. It's almost smoky, and you can see like the brushstrokes put into that is again really cool.
Yeah.
There are even little details on the character themselves. For example, if you look at the pony skin, like it looks almost like cracked rock magma.
It looks like
got
lava.
that kind of appearance. Right. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
It's got very, very small details. This is a piece that I would highly recommend you go to our DeviantArt page and look at this for yourself. You go to cutieartcrusaders.deviantart.com and go to our favorites folder. And
if you want an example of a really well-made piece of art, this is again. There's a lot.
this is fantastic. This has got a lot of.
You need to see
small
this in the
details.
full view.
And it's wallpaper size, so go download it and put it as your wallpaper.
Which I've already done.
Yeah, and if you're a little shy about making your wallpaper ponies, then
this is a good place to start.
A wallpaper for you. So.
Again, who can look at this and
Yeah.
say, "No, that's lame because it's ponies." Dude, did you see the fire?
Lightmare
Look
Sun
at
will
that.
destroy you.
Something I noticed in this piece, which is really cool, is if you look at like the scales of, I think that's Discord. You can see the reflection of the fire, and it's not like continuous on each scale. It's a different kind of shading, and the reflection basically goes with each scale's orientation, which is really well done.
Are you talking about his hand?
No, on
No,
his
the tail.
tail underneath Celestia,
okay.
the light from her Castamer wings and tail goes reflecting onto her scales.
Okay.
And it creates a really cool effect because Discord and his face and his arm, they're lit up by the glow of Celestia, and his neck is and lit up again, his mane and the strands of hair.
Right.
But there's no light casting towards the back of his head, and then how that color seeps in behind him, and then his first hump of his, what is that, behind Luna. What is
Oh,
it?
I thought you were talking about his
Crazy.
behind. I was like, what?
It technically is. Maybe it's his rump. I don't know.
Well,
But
I was
there's
just
no-
noticing. I was
Could be.
noticing his hand, his hawk hand, how it kind of had that scaly look as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, that's really cool.
But behind Luna, there's no detail put into that. There's no scales because the light's hitting it, and
It's a silhouette.
it would minus, it would subtract from the detail put into Luna, and like again the flame on her wings. And I love how her hair is that really cool blue, and how the light and the heat from Celestia blends in with the strands of her hair and tips there.
This is a perfect example of what we were talking about before with the blue, the blue fire. Like
Yeah.
you can definitely tell who is who. It's
She stands out a lot in this picture.
Yeah, going a little bit into color
Yeah.
theory, you can tell the overall color of Celestia, that gold, the black, the golden of her armor, the golden orange glow in like her wings, and it's really daunting and angry. And then you can and the whole piece is like that. Even Discord has that darker brown color, but then you have Luna there with the lighter whites and the again, we were talking about white blending with stuff. Celestia has a lot of white put into her, and then you have Luna, who's the cool, darker purple and light blues with the white, and then now the white's now a cold feel, a snowy feel, and overall sadness. You can see her as she's crying, being held in chains by Discord.
You can tell that the artist made it so Luna was the focus of the art, because you could keep almost everything the exact same, but like say the background and just the general mood of the thing, you could change that all to blue. All of a sudden Luna blends in and Celestia, Lightmare Sun, stands out. So you could tell just using a little bit of color in the background and just the overall tone of it, you can change who's highlighted, and it's very obvious that Luna's highlighted in this one. That's where your eye goes immediately.
Yeah, it's very, very well contrasted between the hot and the cold. And so, yeah, it does. Your eyes do tend to pick out what's different, like the smaller details. And yeah, so that's really
something that I'll keep stressing is that you can do a lot in art with lack of detail, and artists do that purposely, is leave out detail, and then they add what they want to be the focus to put in high detail. So there's a lot in this image that has almost no detail put into it for an artistic reason, purposely. So I mean, if you look at Discord and his face and his eye and his hair, it's really ultra detailed and put into his hair and his horn, and then his arms and the chains. Like every single chain link has detail and lighting put into it, and then Luna has just crazy amount of detail in her wings and the chains around her and in her hair. But then if you look at behind Luna, Discord's body there's no detail. It's just blended colors, soft blended colors. And then behind Discord, his hair, there's lack of detail in his hair there and how it just blends together. And again in the background, and then on his tail is actually cool because it's the mix of both detail and lack of detail, because you can see the strands of his little tail tuft there have that bright orange put into them. But I mean, there's not a lot of ultra detail like put into the armor or something. There's not a lot of ultra detail put into his hair tuft, but there's enough there to create the illusion that when we look at it, that it's still really detailed.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of the negative space, like where it's darker and you won't see as much detail, that's where he kind of leaves some of that out to kind of give the viewer just a little bit of their own creativity and imagination too.
Yeah, one of the again, change the subject a little off of like the color and detail. There's a lot of really, really cool movement in this piece. The first thing is like the overall, what is that? Fire rain coming down on Discord across the whole entire piece, going across it, and then up from the bottom. And then there's a lot of really cool movement added to the characters again themselves. Like if you look at Celestia, when you can tell that she's coming up from underneath Discord right there, and you can see her back hoof is blurred and has a movement blur on her hoof because you can tell that she's moving really quickly. And then how Discord's yanking, and then like on Celestia, and you can see how her hair is being tugged the opposite way. Everything is being put there for a reason. Even the chains kind of going across so the bottom of Celestia there and the bottom of Discord's body, they're blurry with movement blur, and there's not a lot of light or detail put into them. And the overall flow is just awesome.
The fact that it's all coming from bottom left-hand side of the screen heading up towards Celestia, you can tell that really easy when you look at Luna. It's all her mane, all her tail is all being sort of blown towards Celestia, and you've got the chains coming off Discord as well. It's all blowing up from the bottom left-hand side. You can tell that really easily.
I like how the movement of her hair and mane is going towards Celestia. So it kind of creates the illusion that's exactly where she's being dragged from and where she wants to go to.
That's right.
I love how you can, on Discord, you can see his feathers like in his neck, because he has like, I don't know, it's like a feather feel or something. I don't know. The fur. I guess it's not feathers. It's just matted fur, but it still looks really awesome. And then how it changes to scales.
Okay, well, that were our 4 art pieces that we had featured for this week. Every single one of them is amazing. They all obviously have something relating to fire, which was our theme this week, and they're all great. But now we have some questions. We did. We haven't actually had anyone send in any questions to us this week, which is kind of not cool. I kind of want people to send some in because I'm really bad at thinking questions up. um, it's a lot harder than people might think. But I do have some here. One here that I'm sure is going to take quite a lot of time to talk about is one that we did actually mention earlier on, but here's the whole answer. Okay, the question is, you guys talk a lot about color theory and the terms that go with it. What do terms like hue, saturation, and lightness mean? And things like, and different color spaces, things like RGB, HSV, HSL, CMYK, that sort of thing. And go.
I guess I'll try to mention what they kind of talk about, and then Rainbow Plasma can get into like RGB and things like that.
Or do you want me to do that first so that we can just get that out of the way?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so terms like RGB, HSL, CMYK, those are just different. They're like different paint palettes that you have, and you just use a mix of each one. So, for example, RGB is red, green, blue, and you use different values of that to create different colors. So, for example, if red's at like 255, which is the maximum, and green and blue are at 0, then you're going to get a very bright red. If they're all mixed, you'll get a brown, and it's just kind of like a combination of the different colors.
They're values of color and then mixtures of color. So CMYK
Right.
is a different mixtures of color, and then RGB is again a different mixture of color.
Right, so
high-def TV is
CMYK is like a printer, so that's like cyan, magenta, what's the other two?
Yellow.
Yellow and
black.
black. Because, black
Yeah.
starts with a K. Anyways, so yeah, it's a similar kind of thing where CMYK is just using different combinations of black, cyan, magenta, and yellow. And when you combine this all together using certain values, it creates a color. The one that I prefer to use the most is something called HSL, which is hue, saturation, and lightness. Now, Bern, do you want to go into what those are?
Hue only refers to color. So a color. So the hue is what a color is. So like blue, green, yellow, red, or RGB, red, green, blue. So hue is just the differentiation in between those colors. I don't remember the specific numbers for hues in Photoshop, but it's kind of irrelevant. So when we talk about the hue of a picture, we're talking about the color. So so what is it? Hue, saturation, and brightness. So hue is just the color, and then saturation is how much color. So just the amount of color. So if it's a high saturation, there will be a lot of color, really bright, vibrant, or almost neon colors. And My Little Pony, the show, uses very desaturated or kind of low pastel colors. They still have bright, colorful colors, but it's because they're very bright, or their lightness, which is the last part, because it's hue, saturation, and brightness. So brightness, or sometimes called lightness, is basically black and white. It is the amount of white, and it's the amount of black in a picture. So if something's very light, it'll have really bright whites. But if something is very dark, it'll have, or not light, it'll have very, very high black content. So hue, saturation, and brightness refers to what kind of color, how much color, and then how bright the white lighting that color is.
It's again a combination of the three. It's a very digital way to use colors, and you'll see it a lot in the programs that we use for vectoring. Also Photoshop, and you'll probably see it in Psi as well, just in terms of coloring. But yeah, we'll use, for example, I like to use HSL or HSB for hue, saturation, brightness, just to kind of combine colors. So you pick the first value. I believe 0 is red. So you'll pick 0 for hue, and then that'll be a red, and then you'll drag saturation up to somewhere like maybe 85. It's a good red, not too bright, not too not too saturated that it's kind of in your face, but a good kind of pastel color. And then you have like lightness is just whether or not you want it to be like a dark red, like a deep red, or whether or not you want it to be a brighter, like Big Mac red. So if you're going to go into a lot of digital art, if you're going to use programs like Photoshop or Psi or Illustrator, if you want to get into vectoring or stuff, these are the kind of terms that you need to learn in order to make different colors. And it's a lot more organic than it sounds like, because we're using number values and stuff, but it's a lot more organic, and they're just different ways of doing stuff.
But in our past episodes, we've talked about the hue of a piece. I mean, that's just like the colors, the greens, the blues, and then we talk about how the saturation, how something's either desaturated,
Which would be gray.
There's less of a color, or if it's really super
Yeah.
saturated, so it's really bright neon. So like in the show, like Rainbow Dash has the most saturated, bright colors with her mane, but her body fill is really desaturated. It's not a real neon blue; it's a real soft blue.
So, for example, the hue of like that first piece that we did, that Twilight Sparkle going nuts with the fire thing, that sort of hue would be orange.
Right.
Like it's all a sort of a fire
Mhm.
color.
But it's the very first piece, the Twilight's fire thingy. It's really super saturated and it's really super bright. It's definitely not desaturated. Even maybe her fill on her body is a little desaturated, but it still has a really high brightness. And then obviously white is the ultimate brightness.
But those are basically what those terms mean. So if you're ever confused about it, it's just different ways of describing the color and how it's kind of advanced color terms.
But we'll probably use it a lot in our
Yeah.
future episodes.
I mean, if you want to have a little play with it, get one of those programs. If you've already got one of those programs, just make like a blue smudge on the screen and then play around with the color settings. So you can play with the hue, you can play with the saturation and the brightness, that sort of thing,
Mhm.
and just get a bit of a
Yeah.
feel for it.
As artists, well, specifically as vector artists, we just kind of to wrap up the whole using the HSL or HSV thing, we like using that because you can get very similar tones if you keep the hue pretty much the same and you just change the saturation and the lightness value, then you can get very similar colors with just different tones.
All right.
One more
So
question.
with one more question. Okay, so the last question that we've got here is, how do you guys find the art that you feature on the show, and is this somewhere that we can see everything that you guys feature? Second one, I'm going to answer right now, yes, because it's really simple to do. I mention it every week. It's our DeviantArt page, cutieartcrusaders.deviantart.com. It's we've got some favorite folders in there. They're all organized by episode. So episode 1 will have a whole bunch of things we featured in the first episode. Episode 2 will have second episode, etc., etc. There'll be one up there very soon for this episode. Yeah. And how do we
By
find
the time
art
they,
that we
they
feature?
see this, there should be one up there for them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, how
I
do we find the art that we
usually drop
feature?
it in the live stream chat, and I also, if you look in the description, if you're watching this on YouTube, if you look in the description, there's something that says like all the art is featured in this folder, and it'll take you directly to that folder. So that's a really good way to.
Yeah.
Yeah, if
kinda
you're
follow
watching this
along.
on YouTube.
So in terms of how we find the art that gets featured, we do look at people who send stuff in to us. If you want to send us art or questions, again, email us. It's cutieartcrusaders@gmail.com, and put in the subject either art or questions. And if you do submit art, we do go through it, and we'll try and choose art that kind of goes with our theme for the week from there.
We also like choosing art where there's a little bit more to talk about than like, ooh, look, this is a pretty picture or something that I made.
Mhm.
We try to pick more things that have maybe a little bit more in-depth artistic values on them, or really things that are maybe interesting about them, or especially pieces of art that are done really well.
A really good note is we're planning on in a couple of weeks. I'm not sure exactly when it's going to happen, but we're planning on having an episode dedicated to fans of the show who send in their own artistic pieces. We've gotten like 3 or 4 people who've said, "Hey, I made this. What do you think of it? Or can you feature on the show?" A lot of times, unfortunately, it's not possible. We have a lot of really good examples that like these 4 that we showed today. It's hard to kind of fit in a fan one in the middle of those because those ones again have so much detail and we can talk so much about them as opposed to just saying, "Hey, this is a fan." So we're planning on having a fan episode where you guys can send in your art and we will feature them just based on whoever emails us, and like we'll pick out 3 or 4 of people who email us and we'll kind of feature them. So if you want to, definitely send in your art, and it might get on a future episode.
Definitely.
Yep, I'll just plug that email again. It's cutieartcrusaders@gmail.com. That's where you can contact us about pretty much anything. We've had quite a range of people talking to us. The only thing that we do ask is if you do email us, please put what you're talking to us about in the subject. So if you have questions to ask us, put questions, or I want to ask you something in the subject. And if you're suggesting art for us to look at, put art somewhere in the title. It's just that the way Gmail works, it organizes it all for us, so it makes it a lot easier.
So to just finish off that question, how do you guys find the art? We've got a huge stockpile of art that we have, whether or not it's actually on our Cutie Art Crusaders account or just on our memories, and we see a lot of art all the time. We kind of go out and look for it. We're big fans.
Yeah, again, we all try to go a little bit out of our way to try to find awesome pieces of art. We always check DrawFriend. If something's there, we've probably seen it. And we always try to check some of the big DeviantArt streams where people post DeviantArt groups. And we also try to go to Reddit sometimes as well and look at some of the things that are getting uploaded there.
I mean, all four of us have different favorite artists, different people that not that the other four of us, that the other three know. I mean, I've got people that the other three don't know, and then Bern will have something that I don't know, etc., etc. We all know different people, so we all pretty much cover the fandom.
Some of us also go to like My Little Pony Drawing School on Reddit as well and see some of the independent artists there as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
also a good resource if you're looking for somewhere to draw. To learn.
Enough plugging. This has been far too much plugging. I don't have enough money for this.
Plugging in the pony community is free.
We're plugging them, so
it
they're paying us.
It just takes a very large payment of love, Rainbow Plasma.
All right.
But
Anyway,
we're plugging them, so shouldn't they be paying us rather than you paying
we're
us?
going a bit long
Pay me
this
with
week,
your
so
love.
I'm gonna wrap up. Shut up! I'm wrapping up this
But
week.
ponies, Plasma. Ponies.
Do it. Do it.
Okay, so we're wrapping up this week. Thank you guys for coming out again. We hope you enjoyed this kind of different theme. Previous weeks we've been trying like really, really artistic themes, and I thought I'd try something a little bit newer and cool, kind of with fire. Because
keep
fire's
pushing for the
awesome.
artistic ones.
Yeah, we love
Fire
the
is
artistic
awesome.
ones, but we want to kind of keep it varied and stuff. So let us know what you think, for sure. Whether or not it's comments, if you want to email us or whatever. Let us know what you think. We always appreciate any feedback that we get. But other than that, do you guys have anything else to say?
Yep.
Good.
I just want to plug our Twitter account, which is at Cutie Art Crusade, and also our Facebook, which is Cutie Art Crusaders on Facebook. And again, the email.
Yeah, so we have the email to
cutieartcrusaders@gmail.com.
cutieartcrusaders@gmail.com and our DeviantArt, cutieartcrusaders.deviantart.com. All those will be on the screen. I made up a fancy graphic a couple weeks ago. That looks really cool.
Yeah,
so,
I saw that.
So, there's all four on the screen right now. So if you want to go check those out, then... and I believe it's also in the description of the video if you're watching on YouTube. So, that's everything for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed. My name is Rainbow Plasma.
I'm Burned01.
I'm Flutterguy317.
And I'm Pinky Dash.
See you guys next week.
Next
Bye.
weekend, guys.
Bye.